The original Tomb Raider is one of those games I have extremely fond memories of from my childhood. Everything from the sights, sounds, platforming, and combat were unlike anything else I ever saw at the time, and the game fascinated me to no end because of that. It was actually my dad's game, and I'd often prefer to watch him play as it felt way too difficult for me at such a young age back in the early 2000s. The game stars Lara Croft, a prestigious archaeologist that was and still seen as an overall badass heroine in the gaming world that will go to just about any length to obtain ancient artifacts and get what she wants. She's seen in a hotel in the opening cutscene with some cowboy dude that introduces her to Jacqueline Natla, a wealthy businesswoman that offers to pay Lara to search for a powerful and ancient artifact called the Scion that is said to be found in the tomb of Qualopec somewhere in Peru, where it was left behind by one of the 3 ancient rulers of the City of Atlantis. This treasure holds mysterious powers, and as you could probably guess, this intrigues Lara, and she agrees to take on the task, seen heading right up a snowy mountain in Peru in the next scene, searching for the entrance to the tomb. Tomb Raider is overall pretty damn brutal with its extremely precise platforming and large open level designs, requiring full exploration of a level in order to fully map out their surroundings in your mind, as there are no maps to keep track of where you have and haven't been yet like in other games. As a matter of fact, the game rarely tells you anything as far as where to go or what to do, and this only adds to the immersion as this, coupled with the limited UI on screen, really helps make the focus more on your environments and using nothing but your wits and a few different tools at your disposal to survive. It's completely up to you to solve a level from start to finish, and I think the developers really did an excellent job of making these environments feel like undisturbed, hidden tombs you're really not even supposed to be in, that are filled with tons of traps, keys, and levers to open doors, as well as enemies around every corner, just waiting to take you out. Croft Manor acts as the tutorial of the game. It's Lara's home as she lives a prestigious and ambitious life of writing books and selling the many artifacts she finds on her journeys. So we can choose this place from the main menu right from the get-go. You can either practice your controls here or jump right into the main game if you want. When entering the manor, we get a quick glimpse of it from the outside before appearing in Lara's library on the 2nd floor. There's a tumble mat in the next room for us to try out some of our jumping on. This being a PlayStation 1 game from 1996, it has tank controls, much like many of the other early PS1 adopters at the time. Lara moves left or right, but stays in place unless you're holding up on the D-pad. Pressing circle does this weird forward tumble that helps Lara quickly turn around, which will help when it comes to dodging some enemy attacks later. The Tomb Raider 1-3 remastered version I'm playing for this video introduces some new modern controls, which don't require the tank-like movement, but it is worth saying, the game really isn't designed around this type of movement, and while it may be overall quicker and more fluid with a bit more practice of the modern controls, it proved to be quite tricky for someone like me that was just so used to how the original games controlled, so I have to just stick to the classic tank controls. You get used to it. Lara explains that movers have left crates temporarily in the main hall, which acts as a good excuse to teach the player how to walk up to surfaces and vault up onto them. It's so cool how the developers really considered every single aspect of just who Lara Croft is, and gave us a glimpse into her life through the tutorial of this game. Many gaming mascots from this era were simply there in the game with little to no explanation of where they came from or how or why they exist in the worlds they do. But the original developers at Core Design really wanted Lara to feel like a living, breathing person that players could relate to, despite her not actually existing in the real world. In the ballroom, you're greeted to several ramps, and mastering your jumps here is pretty important as they reflect some of the jumps you'll need to make later on in the game. So you can try out your jumps here over and over in a controlled space before trying to make some of the more difficult jumps later in the game that are not in the least bit forgiving. Like I said, this game really is not easy, but the grid-based layout of all of Lara's environments make platforms and other surfaces very precise in terms of placement, as they are oftentimes designed to be just within reach of what you thought you could make. See, the entire game is actually broken up into a grid, and understanding this helps you better realize exactly what jumps Lara can and cannot make. You jump with the square button. When standing in place, you can simply press square and forward on the D-pad to make Lara jump forward, which accounts for 2 squares on the grid. When moving, however, Lara only jumps after 2 of her steps forward from a standstill, meaning you need to account for this slight delay when performing a running jump. This lets you jump 3 spaces on the grid. Lining up a running jump requires you to first run and then press jump right at the end of the platform. Then, if needed, holding X to grab onto the ledge and pull yourself up onto it. It's a combo that is absolutely necessary for certain jumps in the game, so you'll need to master this technique if you want to make it through. Tapping down on the D-pad will have Lara jump slightly backwards, so doing this from a ledge will give you just enough space to make a long jump from a running start. You can ensure you line yourself up perfectly for a jump when walking up to an edge and waiting for Lara to stop. When in this walking state, Lara will not fall off ledges, so you can safely move up to an edge of something without worrying as long as you remember to walk. Lara will stop at the end, and then all you have to do is simply tap back, and you can then go for your running jump, ensuring you will definitely reach the ledge, as long as you're going for the running, jumping, and grabbing combo. Like I said, holding X at the end of your jump will have Lara grab onto the ledge as long as it's within reach, and then you can either shimmy left or right while hanging, or pull yourself up onto the ledge to proceed. Now that we have a basic idea of the controls and what Lara can do, we hop into her indoor pool as a reward, and then Lara says,
"Right, now I'd better take off these wet clothes."
We start up the main game and watch an opening cutscene of Lara scaling a snow-covered mountain in Peru and approaching a massive stone door containing a cave leading us to the tomb. Lara scales the door and opens it by pressing a button at the top as the door slowly swings open and wolves quickly emerge from the cave that start attacking your guide. Lara quickly cuts her rope and starts shooting at one of the wolves while falling in the air. She takes out the others, but it's too late as it seems our guide was killed in the confrontation. Lara, not even the least bit fazed of what just happened, stands up and peers into the massive dark cave before her, and this is easily the most memorable image of the game for me, as it's the first loading screen you'll see before starting the game for the first time, and just seeing these images and first few levels again after all this time really takes me back to the early days of learning this game, and just how much wonder, excitement, and anticipation for what's ahead I experienced back in the early 2000s. The game officially starts now, and you can immediately see paw prints left behind in the snow from the wolves Lara just killed. We're already faced with our first trap being blow darts that shoot across the screen from holes in the walls. If we simply keep moving, the darts won't hit us. And this is part of the game teaching you something again in a controlled environment, that yes, there will indeed be traps such as these that you'll need to be aware of. You experience this sense of unforeseen danger many times in the first few hours of the game, as nearly everything you come across in this game is trying to kill you. In fact, that sense of anticipation of having no idea what's around the corner waiting for you really never lets up throughout the entire experience. Just whenever you think you're safe for a bit, the developers quickly remind you through the use of a spike trap or an out-of-sight boulder quickly hurtling your way that you are never safe in this game. The environments and enemies are doing everything they can to prevent you from proceeding, and this is exactly what you want in a game centered around raiding ancient, untouched tombs, where you feel all the odds are completely against you. We're soon confronted by bats, and need to take them out with our pistols and shoot them. This is something the tutorial didn't teach us about. However, it makes for a good opportunity to learn how they work. Taking out your weapons with the triangle button makes Lara auto-lock onto one of the nearby enemies, and all you have to do is hold down X to continually shoot and take them out. The combat really isn't the highlight of these older Tomb Raider games, and it could be a bit janky at times. Lara sometimes won't switch to the next target after killing an enemy, so you'll need to often release the X button for a second right after killing an enemy before holding it down again to auto-switch to the next target while fighting multiple enemies at once. And very often this split second of needing to switch targets will result in getting attacked and losing extra health you may not have lost otherwise. Lara really doesn't have any way of blocking attacks or defending herself. So the best way to avoid damage a lot of the times is by jumping behind cover or just around in a square while attacking to take them out as quickly as possible while trying to avoid as much damage taken as you can. Your default weapons are the pistols, and these have unlimited ammo. You can find more powerful weapons like Uzis and a shotgun, but these require ammo, and the game often only provides you with just enough ammo for you to find and utilize for these guns, meaning your every shot counts. You collect small and large medipacks, and just like switching weapons, these need to be selected from the pause menu to refill your health. You take out more wolves here, and avoid falling in a pit with a bear in it. I soon after found my first secret, this big Mayan sundial. This game is packed with a bunch of secret areas throughout the game, and discovering them can often result in finding extra medipacks, ammo, and even some of those other weapons I mentioned. I took out the bear and found a silver key and a golden idol in this area behind a stone block. The key opened a door to an open area with a bunch more wolves in it, and approaching them triggered a heart-racing theme that started playing, which added so much tension to the encounter, and really started training my brain to always be on guard when that track kicked in. The music is absolutely incredible in this game, and it only plays very minimally at certain points throughout the experience to make discoveries and encounters feel so much more meaningful, while otherwise mainly being silent other than ambient noises in the distance, and letting Lara's footsteps, breathing, and grunting take the stage, which really adds to the immersion of it all. When you enter this next building with a red roof, and start scaling the spiral-like platforms inside, that iconic title theme for the game starts playing, and this moment perfectly encapsulates what Tomb Raider is all about. Mastering your jumps and movement to reach far-off platforms and scale ancient architecture and tombs, while pulling levers and solving puzzles to access pathways, and using your knowledge of the environments to your advantage to figure out what to do next. After pulling 2 levers to open the middle door, you're immediately hit with some swinging blade traps and a trap door that drops you in some water. You soon after find a way out and use your golden idol to open this door before proceeding on to the next level, Lost Valley. This is easily the most iconic and recognizable level for me and many other gamers that originally experienced Tomb Raider back in the day, mainly thanks to a certain enemy encounter that we get to experience for the first time here. Things start out normal and look just like the other levels that preceded it, although we see a rushing river running through the level this time that we must jump over several times to proceed on. We find a bunch of cogs on the wall next to a lever and can see 3 of them missing. This gives us an objective to find the 3 missing cogs, and after finding another secret little spot here with the Medipack, I decided to jump in the river and have it quickly bring me down to the area I remember so vividly from my childhood. We ride it down to the bottom, take out some more wolves, and scale up this large stone wall to find a skeleton at the top. It leads down to this huge open valley hidden away from the world, as we encounter velociraptors of all things here that are much quicker than anything we've encountered so far. This is where the game starts dipping its toes a bit into the fantastical and unlikely, and it was certainly unlikely that I would have expected to see dinosaurs in this game, considering the general day and age it takes place in and how everything leading up to this point felt a little bit more realistic in terms of settings and enemies. Taking a few more steps into the valley causes a massive T-Rex to appear from around the corner, and this is the insane crazy moment everyone remembers. This moment absolutely terrified me as a kid. Seeing this massive creature appear from the darkness cemented in my mind to always expect the unexpected when it came to this game, and the limited draw distance of the PS1 graphics of the original definitely made it a lot scarier with the black voids seen in the distance until you can get a little bit closer and uncover what it is you're really looking at. Also, this area was always meant to be an outdoor valley, which you can see was restored in the modern updated graphics, but due to the limitations of the original PlayStation at the time, they had to simply make the skybox black here, which I think actually makes this overall experience so much more impactful and memorable. It makes the Lost Valley feel like something that is completely enclosed within this cave, that has been untouched by time for millions of years, and that concept has always felt so much more interesting and jarring in my opinion. Taking out this massive T-Rex here is still fun and iconic to this day, and I made sure to switch between the modern and classic graphics a lot here to see all the differences throughout the fight. The graphics have seen quite the upgrade in the 2024 remaster by Aspyr. Everything in this game is in the exact same spot as you remember it, but with a fresh coat of paint, making the immersion so much stronger and visually impressive, with the more appealing textures to look at. In fact, this is the same exact game as the 1996 original, just with upgraded textures, skyboxes, draw distances, and effects. The snow effects and foliage help push the idea of this being a hidden cavern in the Peruvian mountains. The old architecture and engraved carvings in the stones helped you feel like you're exploring the remains of a long-lost civilization, and you eventually find 2 of the cogs needed tucked away in the corners of the Lost Valley, before jumping across this long bridge here to find the 3rd and final cog up on the other side. Now that I had all 3 cogs, I went back to the wall to add them to the other cogs and pulled the lever, which then caused the water to be cut off, stopping the waterfall's flow down to the pool of water below, allowing us to access the area behind where the waterfall was. On the way back down, I found the shotgun here. This probably would have been helpful for the T-Rex fight. Behind the waterfall leads to the next level, the Tomb of Qualopec. It's crazy how far we've already come in just about an hour of gameplay, only to reach the first official tomb in Tomb Raider. It's a royal looking tomb with warm reddish colors, Mayan looking masks on the wall, and large carved out pillars of different idols and gods. We avoid a boulder trap and can see the artifact, the Scion, resting on a pedestal behind this gate. We take out some more raptors, and these hallways can be quite confusing, as they all look the same, and there are multiple pathways to go down. One of the puzzles here is this open room where we must pull 2 different levers to move these taller blocks around so you can hop across them and reach a high up area. I found another secret area here behind this one statue. It was only some shotgun shells this time, but it's always so satisfying to hear that mysterious chime creep in, letting you know you found a secret. We approach the room with the Scion and see the skeleton of Qualopec and 2 mummies nearby. Lara takes the Scion, and immediately the tomb starts to shake and fall apart in typical Indiana Jones-like fashion. We escape the same way we came in, and back outside by the waterfall area, we find Larson, the cowboy guy from the opening cutscene that originally introduced us to Miss Natla. After a brief shootout against him, we find out that he was sent by Natla to secure the Scion piece after Lara found it, and that the artifact we found is only one piece of a 3-piece pendant. Larson tells us that an archaeologist named Pierre Dupont was sent by Natla to retrieve the second piece of the Scion. Lara knocks him unconscious, and in this next cutscene is seen breaking into Natla's headquarters for more info. She straight up burns a wire to the elevator of Natla Industries so that it will launch her all the way to the top of the building, where she breaks into Natla's office through a window. And Lara is seen reading all about the Temple of Tihocan in Greece, where it's rumored the second ruler of Atlantis is buried under an abandoned chapel called Sir Francis's Fall. Tihocan holds the second piece of the Scion, and we can tell Lara is already dead set on obtaining all 3 pieces. She next travels to Greece and sees a burnt out fire and a can of beans in front of the chapel, confirming Pierre is here. Inside, we're immediately attacked by 2 lions and swiftly take them out before entering a large open room with many large stone blocks, and pulling the smaller one over the Omega symbol on the ground here opens the corresponding door on the far end of the room, which contains a couple of gorillas. Other than the T-Rex and raptors, these are the other enemies that really used to scare me as a kid. Their movement and behavior always felt so off-putting and unpredictable. We activate a lever on the wall here and head back to the main room before Pierre appears and starts shooting at us. We have a bit of a shootout against him before he disappears off screen. You aren't actually able to kill Pierre at this point in the game, and are supposed to see him multiple times throughout our journey here. You're supposed to simply shoot him for a bit, and Pierre will then disappear completely after taking a certain amount of damage by running behind a corner. I didn't realize this was supposed to happen as a kid, however, so I remember thinking my game was glitched or something because I could never find him again before he disappeared, and I guess I thought I was supposed to kill him right away. At the top of this main room, we travel down a corridor which drops us in a tunnel filled with water. We must swim past an alligator to drain the water, and then we can go back and take it out with our guns, since we couldn't shoot it underwater. On the other side of this drained room, we find an opening which leads us further down the underground tomb of Tihocan, and this next area is really something special the first time you see it. It contains this super tall structure we find ourselves on top of in this large room, and there are 4 different rooms that branch off of it based on Greek mythology, that each require pulling a lever somewhere on the structure to access. It's super easy to die here, just due to the massive height of the room, and how easy it is to overstep the edge of a platform and fall to your death, especially because Lara doesn't come to a complete stop when you let go of the D-pad. I didn't mention this earlier, but she actually stumbles forward an extra step from where you let go, so this is another important thing to remember when trying to avoid falling. You will fall many times in Tomb Raider, and it's why I've developed the muscle memory at this point to always hold down the R1 button and walk while approaching any sort of ledge in this game. Her normal movement is just too erratic in tight spaces like this, and that extra step she takes will always throw you off no matter how much you think you've mastered the movement. The first room I took on was the one based on Thor, even though Thor is a Norse god and not Greek. It contains this weird disco ball thing hanging from the ceiling, and it shocks the ground around you. Get it, like Thor's thunder? You have to avoid getting shocked, and in this next room over, we see a massive hammer suspended in the air. Stepping on the Omega symbol here makes it slam down, and you need to jump out of the way at the last possible second to get it to fall. The impact causes a pushable block to fall from the ceiling, and you can then push it over to the wall and climb up to this spot and get a key. Something about this whole room in general just really freaked me out as a kid, and I'm thinking it probably had something to do with the creepy music that plays when you first enter. The goal of this level is to gain all 4 keys from each room to unlock this large sealed door at the bottom of the structure. Next up for me was the Damocles room, and you must avoid his swords all floating in the air above you. Any wrong movement can have you impaled, so you must tread carefully and find the right path to the key and back to the door. Neptune's room was next for me, and despite Neptune also not being a Greek god, I found this room to be super easy. You dive into a pool of water, pull a lever to reveal the key, grab it, and re-emerge. I guess this could be tough if you really can't get the hang of the slightly awkward swimming controls and terrible camera angles when Lara is swimming in tight spaces, and may not be able to get back up in time before Lara runs out of air. Pierre can be found down at the bottom of the main room, so I had to shoot him some more for a bit before he fucked off again, as he was guarding the last lever I needed to pull to access Atlas's room. It contained another scary gorilla and a boulder trap in a tight corridor. It was pretty easy though, and now that I had all 4 keys, I opened the large door at the bottom and was able to proceed on to the next level. Next up is the Coliseum, another pretty cool and iconic location from this game. You emerge from an underwater path to find the outside of the Coliseum guarded by a couple of lions. The game really starts going hard on the lion and gorilla spawns here. After scaling up the side of the Coliseum, taking out some gators and opening this gate, I enter the Coliseum to find myself in this large open gladiator arena. I tried taking out some of the wildlife, but Pierre showed up again for the 3rd time, so
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Under the arena, there's a switch near some prison cells that opens the gate on the other side. I quickly ran over to the far end of the arena and entered this room, which required stepping on one of these off-colored spots on the ground to open a corresponding gate, but only for a split second, so you have to be super fast with your movement. I opened this path that brought me on top of this rock structure back in the arena, and from here I was able to jump across to the opening in the wall and take out another gorilla. I saw a keyhole in the wall and didn't recall picking up any keys, so I needed to do some backtracking. Luckily, I found a stone block on the opposite wall here, which led to a switch that opened a door back in one of the far-off corners of the Coliseum's audience stands. This game really has you exploring every single inch of the level in order to proceed, making every single part of the level feel meaningful. Levels often loop back onto themselves, requiring you to remember where you've been so you can recall where to go back to after opening up a new pathway. If you don't explore the surroundings fully, you'll often be unable to even figure out where to go next in this game. This is another example of how the limited resources at your disposal really result in you becoming more immersed in the environment. I opened another door in the opposite corner area, walked inside, a gate closed behind me, and immediately a boulder started rolling towards me. By the time I could realize what was even happening, it was too late and I was dead. Now, luckily I saved right before entering this room. Something in me told me to do so because you really have no idea what could happen around any corner in this game. This game doesn't autosave at all, so manual saves are imperative every time you accomplish something or make a fair bit of progress in a level because of just how vulnerable you are to everything in this game. You couldn't save wherever you wanted in the original PS1 release of the game, and I think this is a huge reason as to why this game was so difficult for me and many back in the day. The game is still tough as nails in the latest Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remasters, but you're at least able to save wherever you are and as often as you like in this version, which just helps a lot when it comes to completing the game all the way through. See, in the PS1 version, you can only save at certain points when you reach a save crystal, and of course these were extremely scarce, so if you managed to reach one, you almost always wanted to save. This made the game so much more difficult and tedious, because you were often repeating the same actions over and over again while trying to get past a difficult part of the game, just to get back to the point where you were at earlier and end up dying there again. You may have already figured out the correct way to go in your mind, but just executing your movement properly to get there could prove difficult, and if you fall and make a wrong step, you're often repeating several minutes of actions over and over just to get back to where you were. The PS1 release of Tomb Raider 2 did away with this after many complaints and opted to just make the game like the PC versions of all the original Tomb Raider games, letting you save wherever you are, and then by the time Tomb Raider 3 came out, they switched it again to a weird combination of the two, letting you collect save crystals, but you could keep them in your backpack this time, letting you use them wherever you were. This was probably the most balanced way of playing the game back then, but I'm glad I simply have a way of saving whenever and wherever across all 3 games now. Also, if you prefer the challenge of the originals, you can start a New Game Plus in the remasters, which brings back the save crystals. I finally got the missing key and returned to the keyhole, opening up a pathway down to a watery sewer, which eventually led us out to Palace Midas. It consists of this big room with multiple doors around, each requiring a different combination of levers pulled at the top of the room here in order to open. It also includes this nice garden area, and just beyond it, we find the remains of a King Midas statue. Midas was known to harness the power to turn anything to gold, and we kind of need to use this prior knowledge to our advantage by turning some lead bars into gold ones by inserting them onto his broken hand. The game never tells you any of this, and even if you're someone with the prior knowledge of King Midas's powers, I don't think many would have figured this one out. Although, maybe if you happen to touch Midas's hand yourself and watch this brutal cutscene of Laura turning to gold, you would have had some sort of idea of what you're supposed to do. Back by the large room, we open one of the connecting rooms here, and it's a challenge room where you must jump across these pillars before the flames inside reignite and burn you to a crisp, rewarding you with one of the 3 lead bars needed to complete the level. Another branching room is this one with a large stone block in the middle. Pulling out part of the block underground causes sand to fill in this room, which allows us to climb up and jump on top of the stone block, granting access to the upper areas of this level. It allows for a whole new perspective of this area where we were able to explore from the ground level a bit earlier. We take out some alligators and scale down the side wall, and it leads to a path bringing us to a roof above this small room from earlier. Right there on the other end of the roof is the second lead bar. Last but not least is this room with a bunch of spikes on the ground surrounding a few more stone blocks. It's pretty easy, but takes time to line up your jumps properly, leading to our last lead bar, guarded by a gorilla. Now that I had all 3 bars, I quickly went to the Midas room to convert them to gold. With all 3 gold bars in hand, I opened the last door with the correct level combination, where I could insert the bars in place and complete the level. We eventually arrive at this big sewer-looking area known only as the Cistern. It's yet another super memorable level for me that requires raising and lowering the water level to access certain areas. You have to collect a bunch of keys in this level, and it's not always super obvious which key opens which door.
No.
I got a little lost here since the last time I was able to get this far, it was back when I was a teenager, so it's been a while. There are many alligators in the waters here, which kind of require you to avoid them so you can come back later and kill them when the water is lowered. There's also these giant sewer rats all over the place, and I think I found a glitched one under the water here. It's probably because you're actually supposed to enter this room here with the water level lowered, so I had to backtrack and do that. This place is seriously one of the most tight, elaborate levels with many intersecting paths that lead back onto one another, and it's a near perfect Tomb Raider level in my opinion. We eventually reach this large open room with a ton of lions we have to take out before falling through a hole in the floor into a pool of water, which is the secret path leading into the Tomb of Tihocan. The Tomb of Tihocan level seems pretty similar to the Cistern as far as aesthetics and mechanics go, at least at first. You have to lower the water level, do some platforming, avoiding blow darts and these razor-sharp doors you have to quickly run through. Pierre shows up yet again, and shooting him is really getting old at this point for him to simply run away again. Another room of interest is this one with 4 different tiles with inscriptions on them. Moving the stone block here over them opens up a different door for each of them. 2 of them contain rusty keys you'll need to get to open this gate, leading Lara down a long slope where this ominous music creeps in, really enhancing the sense of awe and wonder of traveling deeper and deeper within this elusive tomb. We emerge from the water to find the entrance to the tomb, guarded by 2 centaur statues. After finding a secret lever to open the door, we pass through when suddenly one of the centaurs breaks from the statue and comes after you. This really shocked me with the jump scare the first time I played this, and this thing is actually our first look at an Atlantean. I know you're supposed to stay and fight him, but I quickly ran past and just went straight into the next room, where you get to fight Pierre instead. Don't worry, from here on out, we're going to be fighting way more Atlanteans, so we'll get a better look at them soon, as they are a much creepier interpretation than most would think when hearing Atlanteans. We finally get to take out this asshole Pierre once and for all, as he was waiting for us here by the altar where he took the second Scion piece. We kick his ass, and this is a prime example of just how shitty the combat is in this game. We just stand here and continue to shoot him while taking shots and healing ourselves for a while until he dies. The maneuverability of Lara really isn't all too helpful when facing and shooting an enemy in such a tight space like this, so this really is the best strategy for many. We take him out and collect the second piece of the Scion, a gold key, and some magnums. The key opens the door to the resting place of Tihocan. Inside, Lara reads some hieroglyphics honoring Tihocan and explains that he is the second of only 2 rulers of Atlantis, and Lara then combines both pieces of the Scion, which suddenly grants her immense knowledge of the history of Atlantis, showing us a cutscene where Lara learns about a third masked shadowy figure. The third figure appears to have a Scion piece of its own, and is seen regaining its stolen piece after it was confiscated by one of the other Atlantean rulers, and Lara sees the shadowy figure cast it deep within the city of Khamoon in Egypt, before destroying the lands here with a great meteor. Lara now has the knowledge of the resting place of the third and final Scion piece, and is immediately seen heading there on her motorcycle in the next scene. This is where Tomb Raider starts to shine the brightest, with all of the best elements it has to offer on full display. You start out with nothing but the sounds of your own footsteps and heavy desert winds just outside the tomb. You travel a bit further in, take out a new enemy being a Black Panther, and we look over to see a large sphinx in the center of the room here. Seeing this thing for the first time really is an awe-inspiring moment, and it acts as the centerpiece for this room you'll be returning to over and over again. It's so cool to see how much of an upgrade the graphics are now in 2024, as I switch from the old graphics to the new, noticing new geometry on buildings and walls as well as new natural light sources, enhancing the atmosphere and immersion of such a site. It's important landmarks like this that really help each level stand out and leave a lasting impression in my opinion. We're immediately faced with another new enemy, an Atlantean mummy. Rather than your typical mummy, these things are quick and jump around on all fours like dogs or something. They're made up of bloody flesh and bone and are really hard to get away from. They also explode into a bunch of pieces after killing them. It's extremely off-putting. From here on out, we're mostly going to be fighting these guys and those Atlantean centaurs we got a glimpse of earlier. The game is not fucking around anymore. You need to collect 4 different artifacts here to put in each side of this stone block, so you can open this large door to the left of the Sphinx. Shimmying behind the Sphinx head will grant you a key, which you can then use to open the door at the base of it. We take out some more panthers, do some platforming, and enter this room with some really beautiful Egyptian art and hieroglyphics on the walls. The pool of water here brings you to an underground room with many levels of platforms to ascend up. The title theme creeps in again here, and combined with the Egyptian imagery and careful platforming, you truly feel like a world-class Tomb Raider exploring ancient ruins. Towards the top here, we open a trapdoor in the ceiling, which leads back to the same room from a minute ago, except we're able to access the rooftops of these structures now, which luckily granted me some ammo. After taking out another mummy, I found a sapphire key in this next room, and after flooding this room with sand so I could climb up it and access another pathway, used it to open this door, granting access to the next level. The Obelisk of Khamoon contains a bunch of these stone blocks with hieroglyphics you'll need to pull out to access different pathways. One path leads to this room with a pool of water and alligators. You have to avoid them while swimming underwater to pull a hidden lever on the wall. Another path also contains a pool of water, but it's actually the base of the obelisk, and crossing through this hole in the wall leads to a burial chamber with a sarcophagus guarded by 2 Black Panthers. You climb higher and higher up in this room, and I really love these sections of the game where there's many platforms requiring different timed jumps to get across. Lara really takes her time when it comes to some of these animations, slowly pulling herself up walls and ledges similar to how someone would if they were doing this in real life. The developers have stated that all of Lara's animations were intentionally made to look as realistic as possible, requiring many frames of animation to perform, far more than many other game characters from this era. This makes the game so much more immersive, making you feel like you're really enduring some difficult platforming yourself, even though you're simply controlling your character. I finally reached the top, pull this lever, and immediately have a heart attack due to this jump scare mummy that pops out and made me fall to my doom. We finally reached the obelisk from the level's name, and it's this giant pillar in the middle of this super high up room. There are 4 different bridges we need to cross to get to each side of the obelisk containing an artifact we need to proceed. These are essentially the keys needed to open that big door from the last level. I already activated the first bridge by pulling that lever right before I died to the mummy, so I quickly ran over to the first artifact, being an Ankh. Next I entered the burial chamber where I fought off 2 mummies. You're actually supposed to shimmy across this block towards the top of the room to grant access to a lever in the next room over. This activated the second bridge to let me grab a scarab artifact, which showed me a quick glimpse of the door in the water below. The game often does this, showing you a hint of where a path is now opened, and this is why knowledge of the level design is so crucial. It's for this reason that I often try to complete a level fully before taking a break in Tomb Raider. You rarely want to stop playing halfway through a level, just because of how condensed and contained all these little pathways can be, and just how easy it is to lose track of where you're supposed to be going next. Coming back a few days or even weeks later to a level will have you completely lost and often wasting time redoing puzzles or rooms you already did just to figure out where you were and need to go now. so at that point I would often just restart a level completely. Back in the room with the stone blocks, a door is now opened, and you need to pull over one of the blocks to reach it. It leads to another jump scare mummy, and I'm starting to get pretty sick of these things. The lever on the wall granted access to the Eye of Horus artifact, and now that we collected this, there's only one more to go. There's a bunch of these blocks in this stair-like formation you must climb in the next room, and at the top you grab onto this ledge and shimmy across to these golden platforms. You pull a lever and suddenly another staircase appears where there wasn't one before. At the top we take out another mummy and pull a lever, causing the fourth and final bridge to fall. We grab the final artifact, being a seal of Anubis, and finally the door underwater at the base opens, granting access to this long corridor where we must emerge from the water, fight some mummies, and travel down a path leading back to the City of Khamoon from earlier. It's so cool how you circle back onto the last level now with these artifacts needed to insert into the stone block. This awe-inspiring music creeps in as we insert each of the 4 artifacts. Finally, the large door by the Sphinx opens and we can proceed further on. You finally reach the Sanctuary of the Scion, the resting place of the third and final piece needed to complete the Scion and grant the user immeasurable power and knowledge. You start by climbing up this regal staircase as mummies appear, and after fighting them off, climb up this dirt-covered area where you eventually emerge on top of a massive Sphinx. Most players probably won't even realize this at first, as you emerge on the back of the neck, and even though we just completed a level with the Sphinx acting as the centerpiece to the level, this one is way bigger, taking up most of the space of the level, and is the one I certainly remember more fondly. Most of the platforming you'll be doing happens around the perimeter of the Sphinx up these stone walls. Scaling up the side here, dodging a spike trap, and pulling this lever opens a door on the complete opposite side of this massive cave. I picked up a large medipack and was greeted to another Atlantean mummy, only this one could fly and shoot fireballs. I next scaled up the wall in front of the Sphinx and pulled a lever which opened a door I saw earlier, so I now had 2 doors I needed to get to in order to get 2 different Ankhs we'll need to open the door at the base of the Sphinx. I grabbed the Uzis, which are literally just floating on an invisible platform in the air. This is actually where the developers put them, for some reason, but I was glad to have them, especially because of how quickly they took out these flying abominations. I finally reached the first Ankh room, which was this block puzzle where you had to figure out how to get this block in the right spot so you can get on top of it and grab the first Ankh, which is guarded by one of those Atlantean centaurs we so rudely avoided earlier. Luckily it didn't take too long to kill with my new Uzis, and we now have one of the 2 things needed to proceed. I went back to the other room I saw originally to the left of the Sphinx, and inside I slid backwards, shimmied across, and climbed up to a pool of water which contained a key at the bottom. For whatever reason, I didn't see this key at first, and was so confused when I found the keyhole right above the pool, spending nearly 15 minutes wandering around the level looking for it when it was simply right there the whole time. Anyway, the key opens the door with another Ankh and a centaur. Now that we have both Ankhs, I was able to open a door at the base of the Sphinx, and inside we found this massive underwater chamber with these 2 giant stone statues of Anubis and Horus. The draw distance definitely wasn't this good in the original, so it was mostly a black void towards the bottom of the chamber, which made it look so much scarier and deeper than it really was now that I could actually see the bottom in the remaster. Anyway, you had to reach the base of Anubis, and you pull a lever which opens a door, sucking you through as a current of water carries you to the top. Here we do some more platforming, and reach the top, which leads back onto the room we just saw. Only this time most of the water is drained, opening up a whole new set of challenges and platforms you must carefully jump and navigate across as you scale down the side of these giant statues. I'll say it over and over, but the levels and environments here are really top-notch and the highlight of Tomb Raider, and these incredible landmarks and structures will really stick in your mind as you experience the game for yourself, as they simply aren't things you see once and move past. No, you'll repeatedly circle back onto them and find new pathways you didn't before. We can finally enter the base of the Horus statue, and inside we find a long corridor leading back to the regal staircase from the beginning of the level. We find another scarab artifact by the gate on one side, and after taking out a couple more Atlanteans, use it to open the gate on the other side. We're finally approaching the final resting place of the Scion when suddenly Larson appears. You know, that cowboy asshole that we knocked out earlier in the game, and I proceeded to kill him in literally 3 seconds with my Uzis. The room feels eerie with many sarcophagi all around, and you feel this is a very sacred burial chamber. We finally find the third and final Scion piece, as Lara grabs it and the level simply ends. Lara is seen emerging from the tomb in the next cutscene, and is greeted by 3 thugs of Natla's that were waiting here all along to ambush her. The black guy in the trench coat restrains Lara while another cowboy dude takes her guns. They steal her 3 Scion pieces from the backpack and hand it over to Natla, as we realize this was part of her plan all along. She knew Lara wouldn't be able to resist searching for such treasures, and basically made her do all the dirty work for her, while she simply waited to collect them all. Natla commands her thugs to kill Lara, and in an instant, Lara quickly jumps down to the river below. The kid with the backwards hat tries to shoot her with his Uzis, but misses like a little bitch. Lara, being the badass she is, chases after Natla's crew using a conveniently placed mountain bike. She quickly follows them to their boat and jumps into the water after them as the ship is departing. She somehow goes unnoticed and passes out in the cargo hold. A few hours later, she wakes up and the boat appears to be docked by some mysterious island. Natla and the others are heard heading there by jet ski, and Lara jumps in the water to follow them. We emerge in Natla's mines, a hidden underground mine shaft with many different pathways and hidden areas. It's probably my least favorite area of the game, mostly due to the very drab, boring color scheme, and everything looking just so similar. There really isn't anything new here. We pull away some blocks to pull a lever to open a door, and the cycle kind of repeats a bit here. There's this area that contains a small room hanging from the ceiling by a pulley with these 3 fuse boxes here, so finding fuses becomes our goal for now. This next area has a boulder trap in this room, and you're supposed to outrun the boulder here to get to the passageway that would otherwise block it. Here we find our first fuse, and immediately have to dodge 2 more oncoming boulders. Back in the same area, we see 2 separate rooms closed off for us, except this one actually requires pushing a box over to it so you can jump on top of it and fall through a trapdoor in the ceiling. The inside is a secret passage where you can pull a lever to move this boat we saw earlier, which will act as a platform we can jump from to get behind those boxes and pull another lever, causing a drill to move out of the way in this other room. We can finally delve deeper into the mines and enter the room with lava in it, where we find our second fuse and that other cowboy guy that stole our guns. We're completely helpless here with no weapons to defend ourselves with, so I jumped around here like an asshole for a while before realizing I missed one of the fuses in this room with a conveyor belt. I finally found the lever to allow it to turn on and bring the fuse to me, and I finally placed all 3 fuses into the fuse box here, which caused the room hanging to come crashing down, and inside we find our pistols and medipacks. It's kinda cool how the game takes away your weapons in this level, requiring you to find them again, and now that it did, I went back to take out the cowboy and get some new magnums, before dropping down here to jump from these 2 slopes and grab the sledge. We enter this lava pit and have to be super careful here. We find our shotgun and some TNT crates we get to blow up, which reveals this weird underground skate park area where we fight the bitch kid with the backwards hat and Uzis. This moment always felt so off and out of place. Like, why would there be a hidden skate park located deep within a place like this? He makes a reference to the movie Taxi Driver for some reason, so I had to take him out with my shotgun, which gave me my Uzis back. After traversing a bunch of tight corridors solving block puzzles to proceed, I took on the final goon in the trench coat. He was super easy, and after defeating him, I scaled the side of this pyramid and found this weird looking key which granted access to Natla's insane project she's been keeping locked away from the world all this time. If it isn't super obvious by this point, Jacqueline Natla is the 3rd ruler of Atlantis, that shadowy figure we saw from so long ago. The final level, the City of Atlantis. This is where the creepiness factor is on full display. Most would describe the City of Atlantis to be a beautiful sanctuary that is often depicted as a massive underwater haven somewhere in the sea where intelligent fish-like people live in peace and harmony, but here it's actually this disgusting flesh-covered city where the floors and walls are made up of muscles, intestines, and beating, pulsating hearts. Not to mention there's these massive egg sacs all over the place that burst open when you walk past them, containing flying mummies inside. This place is Natla's crazy twisted experiment gone wrong, where human beings are bred with mutants to create a new race of creatures in her image. It's for this reason Natla was exiled by Qualopec and Tihocan billions of years ago and encased in a pillar of ice, left to be suspended in limbo for all time before she was eventually released from her icy prison in the modern day to rain hell with her new mutant army once again. You have to scale another side of the pyramid and pull a lever underwater to access this room with lava in it. You travel down a path underwater and emerge in this massive vertical room with a trapdoor, lava at the bottom, and flying mummies all around, ready to fuck with you if you happen to get spotted. You have to be super careful with your platforming here, and I was able to grab a bunch of Uzi ammo without alerting any of the enemies. You reappear in this huge room multiple times as you traverse the level, scaling higher and higher each time you come back to it, which helps when it comes to tracking your progress here. This next room is a gauntlet where you need to pull the correct 3 levers to open 3 doors, but pulling the wrong lever hatches one of the eggs in the room. It's just trial and error, and in this next room, you have to push a block to prevent a lava boulder from blocking your path. You'll be doing a bunch of careful platforming for a while over lava pits, fighting tons of Atlanteans, and dodging boulders and blow darts before appearing in the throne room for the 3 ancient Atlantean rulers, Qualopec, Tihocan, and Natla. Pushing Natla's throne away gives us access to the back of the room, where there are 2 different levers and a locked door where pulling either of the levers immediately drops you down a trapdoor in the ground. The one on the right killed me when I fell, so I went for the one on the left, where you have to immediately jump backwards over some lava, and travel down a corridor where you can find a lever that will open the locked door. On the other side of it is a small room where you have to fight one of each type of Atlantean, being a centaur, a flying Atlantean, and one of the dog-like mummies all at the same time. It's easy to die just due to the explosion of the body parts here, since it's such a tightly packed space. Down this path, we encounter one of the most spine-chilling and unexpectedly creepy characters I've ever seen, being a fleshy, bony Lara with no skin, I've heard referred to as Bacon Lara on the internet. She's basically an exact mutant doppelganger version of yourself that was recreated by Natla here in the Great Pyramid. It's so unnerving how something like this is just waiting for you alone in this creepy underground chamber. She follows your every movement, including shooting you, so you can't take her out without also taking yourself out. The room here is an exact copy on either side, except one side has a trapdoor in which you'll need to lure Bacon Lara down by standing on the opposite side of the room where it's safe and watch her fall in. In this next room, we erect a bridge and open a door, both of which are timed, so we'll have to try to get to this room with the altar as quickly as possible without burning to death. Inside we find the now completed Scion pendant with all 3 pieces put together. Lara carefully grabs it, and we see a cutscene of how Natla was condemned for the misuse of her powers and the Sacred Pyramid to create her mutant army. Natla calls them survivalists, a new generation of creatures, as she's seen being frozen solid and cast away by one of the mutants. Lara steps away from the altar with this newfound knowledge as Natla reappears behind the corner. She explains how evolution is not progressing the way she wants, and how these new mutants will strengthen an advanced civilization in her image. Lara tells her this is a bad idea, as we hear a siren announcing the hatching of this massive egg Natla has been incubating, happening in just 15 seconds. Lara points her gun at Natla as she lunges towards her. They both fall, but Lara is able to grab onto the ledge of the platform right below the massive egg as Natla falls to the lava below. The egg hatches, revealing a boss, being this massive torso of flesh and bone that drags itself around with its arms trying to get you. This boss really isn't too bad as long as you keep moving around the perimeter of the small arena and remember not to get too close. I finally defeated the beast with my Uzis as he exploded into a bunch of pieces. Now that this abomination was defeated, I traveled through the door to solve a block puzzle in this tightly packed space to proceed onward, jumped back and forth over a lava pit to avoid getting burned, and dodged an oncoming boulder in this small corridor. At the top we fall through a trapdoor and ended up back by the altar with the Scion. Natla needed the Scion in its entirety to help create her mutant army, and we now have to shoot it, which damages the Scion and the mechanism it's in, stopping any further mutants to be made, and causes the entire island to start to quake and parts of the building begin to start crumbling down. Doing this also opens the door here, where we appear back in the room with the bridge and the lava beneath it, only this time part of the lava is actually turned to stone, and so we can walk on it and now drop down to the new pathway below. Here we must jump to the crack in the wall and, while hanging, shimmy across this gross, pulsating, hard and tissue-like wall, backflip onto the platform, and take on the most intense series of traps and tight platforming Tomb Raider has to offer. There are swinging blades, lava pits, crumbling platforms, spikes everywhere, and plenty of boulders just waiting to come speeding towards you in any instant. This last chunk of gameplay feels really engaging to take on and master, and I really appreciate how Tomb Raider scales in difficulty throughout your entire adventure. It feels like everything you've done and learned up to this point is being put to the ultimate test, and making it out alive this crazy gauntlet of challenges is super rewarding. We must get past this room with fire pits on the floor we'll have to carefully jump over. Luckily the hitboxes for things like fire and spikes is really good in this game, so I could jump right past them with a little bit of finesse. Finally we enter this large open lava pit with a tiny pool of water in the middle down below. If we jump right on the crumbling platform, it'll drop us down in the perfect spot to land in the water. We swim through a short tunnel before finally emerging in the final room, which is just below the very top of the Great Pyramid. Natla suddenly appears from the sky, and she now has devil wings and an arm cannon, just like the flying mutants we've been fighting. She's the final boss and somehow survived the fall, I guess due to her mutant powers. I had tons of Uzi ammo at this point, so I was able to pump her full of lead until she collapsed, and after a few seconds later, got back up one last time and shot me a bunch with her arm cannon. I managed to take her out with just enough health to my name. Now that she was dealt with, I was able to scale up the rock pillars here as the whole structure continued to shake and come crumbling apart. We descend from this high up corridor onto this platform way above the room at the very top and are able to access this exit way. We slide down this long tunnel as the game finally ends. We watch a final cutscene of Lara running away from the pyramid as it quickly catches fire and then explodes in the background. Lara makes it out alive and escapes just in the nick of time on Natla's boat before the entire island explodes into a million pieces. Lara then drives off into the distance as the credits play. Tomb Raider has so many memorable badass moments, not just from Lara's character herself, but from the vast iconic locations and landmarks you'll come across on your journey. I wasn't too sure what I wanted the main topic of this video to be, but while writing the script I realized just how many times I was bringing up the incredible level designs that are always so tightly packed, intricate, and fun to explore. Almost every single level stands out for me, and the level designers had a clear understanding of exactly what types of levels to create based on how Lara's movement worked in a 3D space. Due to Lara's limited movement and abilities on the more primitive hardware of the original releases, the level designers were able to work carefully and efficiently within the limited parameters at their disposal to create finely tuned intricate levels and structures for Lara to hop around and climb on. The quiet, subtle music cues that creep in when making a new discovery, the immersive atmosphere and locations to explore with many looping intricate paths and puzzles to solve, and the more heart-racing enemy encounters give Tomb Raider an incredible level of depth and personality. Everything feels so extremely rewarding to pull off, knowing it is completely in your control to execute the careful platforming and keep Lara alive. Completing a single level in this game feels like a big rewarding accomplishment because of just how many odds are stacked against you in these levels. The locations truly feel like ancient undisturbed tombs you aren't meant to solve, let alone even be visiting. Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered also includes Tomb Raider Unfinished Business, which are the DLC levels that were originally only released on PC and Mac, so it's great to see that these levels are included and available right from the start of the game for the first time ever on console. Their first adventure has Lara returning to the remains of Atlantis to destroy the remaining Atlanteans and their existing hive to keep them from coming back. It's a couple of more levels where you're back to the gross pulsating walls and lava pits everywhere of the last level. This first part is hard as hell, but it's a great extra challenge for anyone looking for it by the end of the game. There are Atlanteans everywhere, and besides the many traps and lava pits you'll inevitably fall in here, these guys never let up throughout the whole experience. By the time you get to the hive, you're in what feels like a never-ending gauntlet of wave after wave of Atlanteans, and it got so intense at one point, I have no idea how I ever made it out alive. The next adventure has Lara returning to the City of Khamoon once again in search of a hidden cat statue. We appear in front of the Sphinx for the third time after dropping down from the ceiling, only the level is completely flooded this time, opening up a bunch of new pathways and challenges to overcome in a familiar location, and you eventually discover a hidden pyramid known as the Temple of the Cat. It's pretty cool, but a lot of the same sort of platforming we're used to. We eventually emerge in the chamber from underwater with a bunch of these animated cat graphics on the wall, and this next part is more of a test of your platforming, requiring you to scale down this giant wall and around this giant golden structure, which we later discover is actually the golden cat statue Lara was searching for. We get to jump on top of its head, and after pulling the switch in the back of its head, it sticks out its tongue, which allows us to go inside its mouth, where there is another hidden switch, which opens the exit to the level. We look out into the Egyptian night sky as the level simply ends, and the credits roll. From the moment I watched my father play this game as a young child, to when I finally beat the game the first time on the original PlayStation as a late teenager, I knew this game was something truly special. The sights, sounds, locations, and enemies are still memorable to this day, and every small task you accomplish, whether it's finding a secret area with a bunch of ammo and medipacks, or just barely making a super far jump you needed to proceed in the level, feels like a nice micro victory you're proud to have pulled off. Tomb Raider 1 is my absolute favorite Tomb Raider game. Almost every moment from start to finish feels finely crafted and meaningful. Every single level has some sort of standout landmark or iconic moment you'll remember, and are always filled with tons of little secrets around every nook and cranny for you to find, making every hill, rock, or ledge in the distance worth exploring. Although Lara's movement can be a bit slow and tedious at times, it's always consistent, which really helps make you feel like you're in control and that your every movement really matters. Making a mistake in this game is almost always your fault, but at the same time, this makes it equally rewarding when you can figure out exactly what you did wrong and correct it when trying again. Pulling off Lara's jumps and other careful maneuvers is extremely fulfilling to this day, and this grid-based system of moving was revolutionary at the time, allowing for several other Tomb Raider games to build off the foundation of this one, as the potential of the grid system combined with Lara's pre-existing movement allowed for tons of further creativity and ideas when it came to sequels. Needless to say, Lara Croft's popularity absolutely skyrocketed after the release of Tomb Raider in 1996, and having a female lead character in a mostly male-saturated market at the time was risky, but I think ultimately helped it stand out more. Tomb Raider is an extremely important game to me that reminds me of an easier time of curiosity, excitement, and anticipation. The game sold over 7 million copies worldwide and made already devoted fans eager for another entry, which is why developers at Core Design were tasked with creating a sequel as quickly as possible. Remarkably, they were able to pump out Tomb Raider 2 only a year later, adding a brand new story, gameplay, mechanics, vehicles, weapons, and of course, locations. Join me next time as we delve into the world of Tomb Raider 2 and the many changes that were introduced in that game. I know this was a long one, but thanks for sticking through the very end. Please leave feedback in the comments and some of your early memories playing Tomb Raider, and I'll try my best to respond. See ya! Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and bell notification icons so you can stay up to date on all my future videos.